Flare Networks has had multiple achievements over the past year that are going to be awesome to kind of dive into today. Solomon here, super excited to be with Genfinity, obviously interviewing a multitude of builders across Web3. Give a shout out to those that make these podcasts possible, such as Hedera, XDC, Algorand, Hashpack, and everybody else. But that being said, not financial advice as we hop in today. This is an interview that I wanted to do at the tail end of last year with Thanos and Gabriel, but huge shout out to the Flare team for helping to put this together. And guys, I would love if we could kick it off with an intro here. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do within Flare, and I'll start with Thanos. And thanks for joining today.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you having us, Solomon. So my name is Thanos. That's what I go by on Twitter. You can find me at 0xThanos on Twitter. What my job at Flare is leading the DeFi efforts for a lot of the build-outs that we do, partnerships with specific EVM ecosystem builders, working with capital partners to help them try to get onboarded, and managing a lot of our newer rollouts for FXRP. So we're really spearheading a lot of like the DeFi and the BD team in terms of partnerships and working alongside product as well too. Yep.
Awesome. Gabriel, kick us off here. Tell us what you do within Flare.
Yeah, so I am working, I work for Centaura. We do a lot of things in the entire ecosystem, but the main thing that I help with is we're one of the kind of, let's say, engines behind building a protocol on Flare called Firelight, which is looking to bring coverage to the DeFi ecosystem. So trying to bring in institutions by allowing them to get some sort of security for their deployments with this type of coverage. And the main thing that we're doing is we're leveraging XRP to be this economic value that is securing this coverage for these institutions, which first it is unlocking institutions coming into the network. And then second, it is a really good use case for XRP to get access to DeFi and start earning rewards and fees that have usually been something that XRP is locked out of.
Yeah, I think over the past, let's say 18, this is such a weird kind of place that we're at right now in blockchain and distributed ledger, because we've obviously had more adoption than we've ever had. All the enterprises and institutions are here. Now, it's going to be interesting kind of to watch where we go next. So I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts, whoever wants to take it. Talk about kind of the road traveled, I guess, thus far for Flare Networks and maybe even kind of the broader space as far as DeFi is concerned. So milestones over the past year that you guys think are relevant to kind of mention so that people understand what Flare is and the accomplishments that far, so that we can then lead into kind of where you guys are going next. And Thanos, I mean, definitely see the nods of the head here. So I'd love some of the milestones you guys are proud of over the past year or so.
Yeah, for sure. 2025, I think, was one of the best years in Flare's history. The macro is extremely choppy, but I think nonetheless we've weathered through, and we had, I think, what was our best year. We launched FXRP, which is our first F asset, which we've been talking about since the launch of Flare. We launched that in September, and through Q4, we minted from September till now, so essentially 1 quarter, maybe a quarter and a half, we've minted about 88 million FXRP. So that's about close to $200 million worth of XRP in 1 quarter. Now, that growth was mostly fueled by retail. We didn't even have many institutions and capital partners that we were in touch with mint yet, which was very cool to see that type of organic growth. We're now focused more on the infrastructure side as 2026 comes in, and getting a lot more of the institutions to come in and start working with FXRP and working with staked XRP. So Firelight, which Gabriel mentioned here, is an XRP reinsurance protocol that is taking in XRP as deposits and minting staked XRP into the Flare ecosystem. So today, Firelight has about 25 million of that FXRP of the 88 million that is minted on Flare within Firelight today. So just about a third of all of the XRP that's in our ecosystem is on Firelight. So me and Gabriel work very closely together in terms of incubating Firelight and also working within the ecosystem for using staked XRP. We've done a bunch of other cool stuff. We launched Hyperliquid, or we launched the first XRP spot market on Hyperliquid this past week. We're starting to grow that market out, and we're now looking to expand the reach of XRP just more globally and broadly across all EVM ecosystems. So Flare very much will be the home, the minting of F assets, and really be the driver of XRP yields on chain with Firelight. But we are looking at numerous different things in terms of how can we expand our own ecosystem in 2026 and also expand out to specific pockets of XRP and building the infrastructure to get there. So there's a bunch of different partnerships that we're working on. One of the partnerships that I think I'm most excited about is Firelight working with exchanges, right? So there's specific exchanges that Firelight is plugged into that we're planning on onboarding. So XRP yield directly to the exchange, where users can just one-click earn yield, is one abstraction or one piece of infrastructure that I think I'm very excited about. Another piece is more on the non-custodial side. So getting out to specific custodians or non-custodial wallets. Some of the largest XRP non-custodial wallets are interested in bringing Flare's XRP yield solutions to their wallet. So how can we get there and make it a user-friendly way where they can just simply click a few buttons and deposit versus having to actually manage wallets on both chains, having the wallet have to then be able to work through a lot of those hurdles. So we've launched F assets. I think kind of the next step is like we have the foundation. How can we now get to the pockets of XRP and the places of actual capital to enable them to deposit and make it very easy for people to participate within DeFi?
Yeah, it seems like, and you know, whenever I see a lot of stuff kind of on crypto Twitter and everywhere else, it seems like there's a lot of collaborations as well from kind of XRPL mainnet over into Flare from the infrastructure provider standpoints. I even like think of like seeing like some of the Visa Vind tweets for Salmon and some of that stuff. What has that experience been like? Because obviously the goal, as you mentioned here, is to extract away complexities and just make it as easy as possible to, you know, start leveraging your XRP or your digital assets in a way that, you know, you can generate yield and do all sorts of things with them. But you mentioned user experience. I would love if you could talk about how important the collaborations have been, and then what you kind of see as the end game for user experience, because I think it's probably the most important question in crypto, not only for retail, but for enterprise and institutions too.
Yeah, so for context, I think a lot of your followers probably know who Vitsa is, but he is the CEO and co-founder of XRPL Labs. They are the builders of Zaman Wallet. And Zaman Wallet, I would say, is maybe the largest, maybe like the top 3 largest wallet of XRP holdings non-custodially. And so Zaman holds a decent chunk of XRP. And when you hold XRP non-custodially, kind of the next step is okay, how do we activate this XRP for our users? So Flare has been working on that for some time with Firelight, obviously, and within our ecosystem. So the next step is how do we build infrastructure for people like Zaman to essentially one-click deposit or be able to get from their non-custodial self-wallet into a place that they feel comfortable and be able to earn yield and then be able to put that capital to work. So for us at Flare, what we're most focused on is getting from that point A to point B. And then once that capital is ready to go to work, we kind of hand it off to the Firelight team to be able to essentially put that capital to work, right? So, well, what is the most ideal solution that we think about for our users? Well, that solution very much so is the really basic, like I see 2 numbers and just 2 buttons, right? I can deposit, I can withdraw, and I know how much I have in it and how much I'm earning. Like those four things is really the only thing that you want to show most retail users, and that's the level of abstraction that we're trying to get to, right? So we're really attacking it from both sides, getting to the pockets of XRP that exist. How can we get into those four specific things, and then really like putting that capital to work with Gabriel and his team over at Centaura and Firelight.
So I know
Yeah.
obvious. Oh, go ahead, Gabriel, please.
Yeah, just to add on that, I think one of the main things, because as Firelight, while it's on the supply side, it's open to anyone to deposit. I think where we are targeting is like the biggest interest that we see are from institutions. They're the ones that are looking to have coverage. We've seen other protocols that have launched that are more retail specific to provide coverage. And we often find that most people who are already on utilizing DeFi are fairly savvy compared to the general crypto user. And so the next step in unlocking a lot of this capital is like getting to the institutions. They're willing to take lower returns, but have that security, and often they have some sort of compliance things that they need to look at. And so, kind of touching on what Thanos was saying is that we're looking to have it on the supply side, that we're not only just having the wallets, but Firelight's also pretty actively engaged in trying to like have direct connections to exchanges, so they're able to take the XRP that is sitting, or other assets that are sitting on their exchanges, and have some sort of way that they can get deployed into DeFi. But then on the other side, the people who are buying the coverage are also likely to be institutions on some of their programs that they use on their exchange. And so you can kind of create this like symbiotic loop that like, you have XRP that's going to be able to secure some sort of exchange integration for another asset, and then possibly like back around the other direction even once, XRP starts to get more built out into the DeFi ecosystem. And there is the need to have coverage for XRP users who are deployed into DeFi. And once we get this loop going both directions, there's a lot of scale that can happen for Flare, for Firelight, for the ecosystem in general, because these institutions will start to feel more comfortable and be able to scale in at real size, TradFi size, let's say.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I mean, compliance and security, certainly, and there's probably, you could probably have an entire hour just about this, but I would love if, from Firelight's standpoint, if you can talk about how you guys are handling security, why there's, what some of the challenges, I guess, that you guys face in trying to get people to understand what you're doing, and kind of the future that we're moving towards to leverage assets like XRP and others, Bitcoin, Doge, all the other kind of assets out there. But how do you kind of give people that warm and fuzzy, for lack of better phrasing, what you guys are doing at the security level? And then when you deal with institutions, a lot of compliance aspects too. I'm sure you guys are tackling all of that on a pretty consistent basis with all those relationships. So security, compliance, if you can maybe tackle that for us, Gabriel, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. On the security standpoint, when we're looking at institutions, they're not even looking for warm and fuzzy. They just need to make calculations. And how Firelight is going to it operates is that you turn these really, sometimes black swan, very small probability events like exploits, technical exploits, or even economic exploits that involve like bad debt on a lending protocol. These are really hard to quantify, for especially these institutions that don't have this experience. We have that expertise at Centaura and Firelight, and so what we are doing is we're kind of translating these risks for these institutions from these probabilistic events that are hard for them to quantify into a collateral risk. So in the end, they are being able to, make payments to and incorporate those numbers directly into their earnings and outcome reports, because at the bottom end, like they see 10, 15%, 20% maybe on different returns for DeFi protocols, but if they can't account for those black swan events or those risks there, they just can't enter it for it. You know, if you're thinking of a hedge fund or some pension fund that maybe wants to enter the space, they have people that they have to account for on the other side. And so this way they can kind of, we make it a quantifiable risk and cost for them. And so that makes them able to enter the space. You know, I guess sure, feeling more warm and fuzzy in the end. I don't think the accountants at these institutions ever feel warm and fuzzy, but you know, they're going to be happy about the numbers at the end.
Yeah, that is not a technical term. You know, one thing's interesting. It's a little bit, I guess, of a sidebar, and I think it's not even a narrative. It's just what's happening. I think we've seen a shift over the past, 18 months, I would say, where, you know, even the largest institutions on the planet are saying that pretty much every asset at some point in time, in some way, shape, or form, is going to come on chain and be tokenized. Now, what I find interesting there is what types of things are going to occur with an asset like XRP, FXRP, Bitcoin, Doge, all these, you know, different assets. How are they going to interact with tokenized real world assets is kind of pretty interesting to me, and what type of opportunities are going to come off the back end of tokenization. Like, this is maybe just a broad question, like, but from Flare's standpoint, what is the opportunity here for FXRP and other assets paired with tokenized real world assets and kind of the commingling there? It's more of a personal opinion question for you guys.
Yeah. So Flare historically has been focused on merging in assets that we don't historically use in EVM environments. XRP of all of those assets is the largest in terms of when we think about these assets that exist, that have been around crypto for years, that have generated so much wealth, but people cannot put it to use, right? So FXRP, in terms of the way that we think about it, it's a capital asset that we're onboarding to be able to use as capital and to earn yield on it in various different ways, whether it's through DeFi dApps or it's through using it as the tokenized version of XRP that you can then essentially deposit into Firelight, which, if you really think about it, it's reinsurance tokenized, right? And so tokenization has obviously been long thought about within our industry. I think in certain cases it makes sense. In this case, it's unlocking XRP as a capital asset that doesn't earn any yield today, and that we can leverage it to be able to deliver yield back to those capital holders. And we're doing it with Firelight through reinsurance, but there's also various different things that we can tokenize to be able to plug in XRP as a play for being the capital asset that can provide, let's say, stability and earn yield, right? So tokenized stocks have been taken off. There's a lot of things that are being tokenized. I think RWA is a very broad term, but I think Firelight is working on one specific problem to begin, and I think it's going to be a pretty big hit. And then from there, we can think about what else can we expand XRP or any of these other coins that are untapped liquidity, get them into Firelight, and then expand kind of the suite of things that you can do in terms of tokenization. So staked XRP very much is that. It's just tokenized reinsurance for XRP, if you think about it like that.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge problem to solve, obviously. I think you guys did Flare, kind of the ecosystem in general, did a really good job at that, initial couple years of onboarding. I'm sure that the education and everything else was interesting to go through. But now you guys, I guess, are kind of at the point of, how do we onboard at scale at this point in time? Because obviously FXRP is live. What was that process like? Like, what is the kind of challenge right now? Because obviously, I would assume it's a massive opportunity because of the untapped potential of a lot of the XRP mindset is, oh my God, if I just hold this, there's some imaginary switch that I'm going to become a multimillionaire from my $500 worth of XRP or whatever it may be, rather than I can leverage my XRP to earn X, Y, and Z, or potentially earn X, Y, and Z by actually getting my XRP out there into the wild. How do you guys tackle that, because I'm sure it's an interesting problem, but there's so much opportunity out there, for you guys with an asset like XRP to onboard.
Yeah, for sure. I think Gabriel might be able to answer this a little bit better in terms of how they think about it. There's a lot of coordination that's needed, right? So we work very closely with Firelight because we think not only is XRP going to be the first F asset, or like it has been the first F asset, it's our primary focus right now. But in terms of being able to expand that suite of offerings out, I think we rely on Firelight very closely for that. For Flare, we consider ourselves as the infrastructure builders and the EVM ecosystem builders, and being able to essentially bring those assets in. And now, if you're long a specific asset, why wouldn't you take an extra X amount of yield on top of it, right? Especially if you're comfortable with those risks. So I think Gabriel can do a better job of explaining like the risk to reward here and how to leverage those assets.
I mean, the the one thing that I would say is, which maybe is to some extent contrarian to what some people think, is that in the end, a lot of the capital in XRP, in crypto in general, is held by institutions, whether directly or indirectly via exchanges. And so if it's indirectly via exchanges, a lot of the users on there are going to rely on the exchange and their due diligence on how they are, develop some sort of earn program or something. And so, we always want to have as clear of a picture painted for these exchanges so they understand what they are looking at when they come into Firelight. And then kind of separately from Firelight, Centaura, like we've been doing strategy management for quite a long time with a lot of different large clients and exchanges. So we already have, connections to these groups because they know us from, since 2021, we've been running strategies for a lot of the largest exchanges. In terms of like retail perspective, let's say, I think the idea is that for some of them, of course, they want to make sure that they feel comfortable. Everybody has, there's a curve of, risk profiles for different individuals. But an easy way to think about Firelight is like, for some of these assets, you're not necessarily going to be able to deploy it into some of the largest lending protocols on Ethereum, on Solana, on Flare. You won't be able to deploy directly into those, or you'll only have one specific blockchain that you can enter into. With Firelight, you would, instead of deploying XRP or some other asset directly into Aave, you can deploy into Firelight and you are securing some DeFi activity on Aave. And if you're able to get some returns on that from some fees from that XRP, it's almost similar to taking on the risk of deploying directly into these protocols. But since Firelight is aiming to diversify its coverage across multiple protocols, you aren't just concentrating your risk deploying into one protocol, you're taking a whole basket. And so this helps mitigate some of these risks there, where you can kind of one-stop entry into a plethora of different strategies and protocols across multiple blockchains. And if there is some sort of exploit, if you were in one of those protocols, you would lose everything. With Firelight, it's just a percentage there, and that means that the protocol is working. So this is a way for retail to kind of see it as something that is less scary than maybe some of the deployments that people make that are more DeFi savvy.
Yeah, I think XRP, the term Dino coin, I know was coined a couple of years ago from, I forget the young influencer kid that said that. But let's say Dino asset beyond Bitcoin to enter into DeFi at real scale, which is interesting because it seems like such a gigantic opportunity. And it's amazing that an asset like XRP, top 5 essentially, oldest DEX, the XRPL, it's essentially a DEX, And yet we haven't really seen meaningful DeFi until initiatives like Flare started coming about. So what are some of the growth expectations that you guys have for, Firelight? What type of scale do you expect now that kind of the baseline infrastructure is in place and it's time to, I guess, grow out the initiative in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, because there's this matching supply and demand side, we have to be really, careful with how we line these up because we want to make sure we have the supply side coming in via XRP. We want to make sure there's that demand side, but we've been working, diligently on connecting and integrating with different exchanges and other products that would be able to buy this coverage. Um, the way we see it, this is the missing primitive in DeFi, and this is the unlock. This is one of the key barriers to unlocking a lot of institutional commitments. So even if it's not XRP necessarily from the institutions they love stablecoins, and this is going to be one of the things we're covering. So if this XRP is allowing stablecoins to come in, it's just going to create that loop. So, scaling takes time, but we don't see any reason that this couldn't be covering, protecting assets in the billions across DeFi.
So what metrics are you guys using right now to signal success, total value protected or covered? And I'm assuming institutional participation into what you guys are doing is driven by increased safety, things like that. But go through some of the metrics. What are the metrics that are going to signal success for you guys moving forward?
I mean, of course, TVL is always a good indicator. But yeah, there is no metric yet for coverage in DeFi. So this is something that we've been playing around with. Like, really, how can we quantify this and signal that it is something that people are adopting? And so, yeah, this whole total value protected idea is really, I think, a useful metric to show. And for us, it's helpful because we would be the leaders in the space ideally, and then for different protocols, or different DeFi vaults as well, they can show these metrics, and this kind of gives people a understanding of what sort of risk profile they're entering into. So even if they believe and they think that the team executes well and the smart contracts are well secured and audited, if you have this TVP in place, then you're able to know that even if some catastrophic event happens, you're not going to lose everything. You're going to get a portion of your money back or all of it back through a claims process. This hasn't been implemented yet, but I think we'll be pushing to have this metric more well known in the space because we only see it as growing in importance and being comparable to the TVL metric as we see today in the future.
Yeah, I think metrics and KPIs in crypto are always interesting to analyze, like what's actually going on. Like TVL is an interesting one for me because that's been used in Ethereum forever, and I always wonder, like, okay, just because value is locked, does it mean that it's liquid? Does it mean that it's when you say TVP, it's interesting. So total value protected, my head started going towards total value participating, which is like, I think active users as a metric is super interesting, like to actually measure real active users and real participation in blockchain. But total value protected, now my head goes total value participating. I would love if you could talk, about how you see coverage, reinsurance and coverage, and some of the things you guys are doing with Firelight fitting into the next phase of DeFi, especially given the fact that we are starting to see this kind of merger of TradFi and DeFi, and it's that's kind of the future that we're headed towards.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been touching on it throughout the call here, the talk, but we're starting to see a lot of exchanges develop channels. I mean, the biggest case is Base, of course, right? Like Coinbase created its own blockchain and it's had wild success. And they've had some protocol integrations like via Morpho where people can just like borrow stablecoins directly from their base wallet into Morpho, and they don't even know that they're doing that. So it's kind of coming back to what Thanos had said about abstracting a lot of this away. And we see the best way to abstract this away is at the wallet level or at the exchange level. And so these two types of products can just integrate into us, and then the users don't necessarily know, like for example, some sort of earn program or something. They're depositing there, they're getting the yields. This is kind of the next step on. We see all these DeFi vaults that have been very successful in the last 1 or 2 years. And then you just add another layer on top of it, which is the centralized exchange layer. And the users that would never come on to DeFi because it's too confusing can just tap right into these different vaults. And the coverage would be the buffer and kind of the catalyst that allows people to join with a bit more peace of mind. So, capturing the set it and forget it users is going to be big on the retail side. On the institutional side, it's just a matter of them needing to be able to quantify these things. And the idea is that Firelight is going to be the catalyst or the turning point that allows a lot of these integrations to happen. We already see the trends, but this is some way that a lot of these institutions that really need more assurances than they have right now in DeFi can enter the space, and it will benefit everybody in general. And I think we'll start to see a lot more of these integrations where it's users who never touch DeFi as we see over the last 5 years. They're just entering it via some sort of app point, and
Yep.
then all of the stuff, the rest of it is done for them.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I think if you look at last year, what was sneaky the best integration was the base Morpho integration for sure. They had, I think, close to 1.5 billion in terms of originations, and what I think that really represents is essentially like merging this on-chain liquidity to off-chain users. And I think that we've done extremely well in terms of building these DeFi ecosystems with these extremely intricate yield trading apps, with these borrow lends, with specific strategies that you can put on with LSTs, all of these different types of things. But what really started to stick in 25 was actively managed vaults, or vaults that are essentially doing something with your asset and helping you earn the yield. So a lot of these 4626 actively managed vaults, and you're starting to see essentially like the merge of capital on chain and off chain starting to integrate with these CDFI integrations that you're saying. And I think those are kind of the two sweet spots, on top of obviously tokenized equities, and that then plays into a lot of what I'm talking about as well too. But I think like those two or three things are going to be like what really sparks the next run for most of crypto, to be honest, is that people start to realize that we can create this global hub of liquidity on chain, and then start to plug in a lot of these different exchanges and things like that, or wallets or custodians, to be able to then like use this global hub to be able to generate yield or originate loans, or go get access to specific things that they don't have access to in their regions.
Yeah, I think you mentioned just kind of the user flow too in the future, and I think that in crypto and in this space, we do a really good job at coining really important phrases for all of us, which are I don't know if even we're the target audience. I think the target audience is coming, but I don't know if they're all here yet. So I think it's going to be really interesting to kind of watch, because every single person on the planet has is in a different status as far as financially, whether it be knowledge or actual, how much capital do they have. And I think, as you mentioned, Thanos, like I kind of resonate with that idea of where we're heading, which is, a user has value and they want to deploy that value. Maybe they just see different risk profiles and they pick which one works best for them and they deploy it. They're not going to necessarily, people that aren't here right now aren't going to be like, at least most of them, into like active trading and DeFi strategies. They just want to like, go and deploy value and participate. And it'll be interesting to watch. I think even as we close out here, I'll do forward-looking statements in a second, but at kind of this practical level, and I guess, Gabriel, this is more of a question for you. Which type of events are covered right now from a kind of a safety standpoint? How would payouts work if some sort of an attack happens? If there's a hack, how, do users lose funds or not? Maybe just kind of walk us through some of that stuff, and then we'll do some more happy forward-looking statements.
Yeah, so this is a good question. The most important thing to know is that we're still like in our launch phase, so we do have this vault for depositing into on Firelight, or on Flare, excuse me, but we haven't gone to our feature complete protocol just yet. We're targeting, early Q2 as of right now, but we know how those things can move, maybe earlier, maybe later, but the idea is early Q2 this year is when the whole thing will go live. Our core focus right now, like we have a lot of the components built out where, the types of coverage items that would happen are going to be, for example, technical exploits. I think this is one of the largest blockers for at least institutions to come in. And then different economic exploits or economic events, such as, some sort of bad debt with collateral issues, or, a collateral issue, or some sort of different types of like maybe Oracle manipulations. So these are the types of things that we're planning to cover. We are doing a lot of due diligence on the at least the initial protocols that and even the assets that we're planning to cover at the very beginning. So we have 2 points. We're trying to make sure that we're only covering protocols and assets that we deem as being quite safe, but then also at the same time making sure that it's diversified enough that you don't just have all of your coverage on one, the ETH of a pool, and if that gets exploited, the whole protocol falls apart, right? And so these 2 points are what we're working on right now. What we see is that probably a good entry point on making sure that the diversification happens is by having this coverage be implemented higher up the stack at the vault level, at the exchange level, neobank style level here. And then you can cover all of the downstream integrations that they have. So yeah, that's what I would say. So for everybody who's wanting to know when, I would say early Q2 is where you should set your calendar.
Awesome. Well, I want to get forward-looking statements from you guys. We talked about kind of the past and the present and some of the future, but I think, I always like to hear what you guys are excited about. Flare specific, broader crypto, blockchain, distributed ledger space. Take it wherever you want to take it. The floor is yours. And I know we went maybe a tiny bit over time here today, but I'll let you guys go after I get your happy statements. Thanos, we'll start with you, and we'll go over to Gabriel. And thank you guys so much again for joining today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you having us on, man. Yeah, I think where Flare's headed, I think I'm super excited about. I think that we're actually making a decent dent in terms of making a difference on the industry. We're getting closer and closer day by day. I think I think we have a very clear path ahead of us, and it's just a matter of executing and believing that people will participate and we're going to get there. So for me, I couldn't be more excited for what's to come. And I think I'm generally very excited about 26 for a lot of different reasons, whether it's personally, career-wise, or even just general macro or market. I think it's going to look a lot better than it did in 25.
Gabriel?
Yeah, on my side, no bias or anything, but I think Firelight is probably one of the most interesting things coming up. It's fairly innovative to what we've seen in the space before, and we see a lot of interest from the people you would hope to be interested in this. Some other things that I think can be quite interesting that we've touched on here is the idea of these like tokenized stocks. One thing that we haven't said is tokenized stocks and also this really large adoption of stablecoins. Stablecoins is the winning ticket for DeFi for institutions. They understand it. It makes sense to them. They want a piece of it. So that just means more liquidity on chain to be used for different things, which is always a big win. That said, with these tokenized stocks or some of these other assets, I think a lot of times there's a lot of people who want to access the liquidity in there without selling for, different reasons. And this is something that you can't really do easily with, your traditional finance portfolios. You can't just say, I want to borrow some stable coins or some dollars on this. This is something that is perfectly fit for DeFi. You borrow, you supply your collateral as the stocks, you borrow some stable coins that you want to use on, some real world activities on chain. And I think that there's going to be a lot of growth in this sector. There's a lot of caveats to this, but I would see really specifically stocks, tokenized stocks coming on in a big way in 2026.
Well, I certainly appreciate you guys joining us today. And I wanted to mention for anybody that wants to check out the work that Firelight's doing, go to @Firelight FI on X, and you can go to firelight.finance on the web. And Flare is flare.network and @Flare Networks, plural, on X as well. Thanos and Gabriel, definitely don't be strangers. Let's do this again. And, a shorter time frame than the last time I reached out to you guys, because I know that's on me. I hopefully we can bring you back again very, very soon. But I thought it was an awesome discussion. Looking forward to all things Flare moving into 2026. It's crazy that we're in 2026, by the way. And that being said, thank you guys so much. And yeah, appreciate it.